Welcome to the Bywords Show. I'm your host, Hannah Hughes. Bywords is all about equipping women for purposeful living by starting conversations, celebrating stories, and inspiring faith. In a world that applauds the hustle, I'm here to help you break free from the lies and come back to what really matters. It's time to get real, get rooted in truth, and come alive in relationship with Jesus so you can show up to each day with intention and confidence no matter where you're at in your story. Here we believe that embracing our stories brings hope, healing, and purpose to the process, and sharing our stories helps others do the same. Whether you're looking for a midweek faith refresh, practical tools for pursuing your dreams, or just need some good old-fashioned girl talk, you're in the right place. Grab your latte and let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Byword Show. I'm so glad you're here today. Today is the day. We're going to have fun. We've got Jenessa with us here to talk about all things Christian content creation, using your passions and your gifts to glorify the Lord and social media, all of those things. But before we get started, we have to know what has been filling your cup lately, both literally and figuratively.
Well, literally right now is my matcha. I got my matcha. I've not been drinking coffee for a year since January of 2023, and it's been the best decision I've made for my health. My husband is not on board with it though. I tried to get him on the matcha train, but he is a diehard coffee guy. So that is what is literally filling my cup right now. But in just life in general, being with my family right now has been really just soaking up all the moments. It's been special. I'm due with my baby girl in June, so my 4-year-old is just, he knows transition's coming, and so yeah, we're doing all that we can to just spend time with each other.
Oh, that is so sweet. That is such a fun season. I have to say also, I love matcha and I didn't drink coffee for years. I just recently started like postpartum after having our daughter. But it's so funny because so many people are either love it or hate it with matcha. But I love that you're another matcha girl because I have always been just like diehard matcha.
Yes, matcha all the way. I used to hate it, and then you just gotta get it. Your palate will get used to it. If you're someone that's trying to get into it, just give it time. You gotta find the right place that makes it good too, because yeah, that makes a big difference. I don't like milky matchas. I need it to taste like matcha-y with like a little bit of syrup and coconut milk, and it tastes so good.
Oh, with coconut. That is good. Okay, I hope you guys are already taking notes because we're already getting some gold right here. Well, I would love to just hear about your story. Like, what initially got you into the world of content creation and like how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I will tell you right from the get-go, I never imagined I would be doing what I'm doing today online. It was never the plan. It was never something I sought out to do. It really started really before content Christian creators was like a thing. It was before, well, now it's everywhere, which I love it because more people are finding their voice. And I'm like, yay, the more that we can bring the gospel into social media and truth, like the better. But I kind of started in 2015, which was, yeah, like almost 10 years ago. And I was young. I had just gotten married, and it kind of coincides with my lettering journey. I'm a hand lettering artist. I have an online business where we sell all kinds of home decor, lettering, home goods that are all centered around faith and encouragement. And so, in that season of starting that, the Lord spoke to me one day. He said very clearly, I want you to share your process on Instagram. And that was like terrifying for me because I'm a perfectionist, or I was a perfectionist. I mean, there's still times where I have to like make sure I don't go back into that old cycle. But I remember him saying that, and I kind of was like, I don't know about this, but obedience is the best decision. And I began to just, share my process of hand lettering. And in that process, the Lord really killed that perfectionism in me and had to work that thing out. And God has a way of taking the things that we say yes to as a way, as a means to purify and refine us. And that definitely was the season for that. And so really I just started posting, and it was being faithful in the little. And there was a point I remember where, and this was the thing that God had to like have die in me, was this whole thing of like, well, I what do people want to see? Like, what do people want to consume? Like, I was so more focused on what do people want rather than being faithful to give what I had. And I remember having this moment of, I am done. I want to quit. I am over this because it just, social media can do that. And I'm sure every person has at one point said those words. I hate social media. I want to get off. But the Lord, I remember just feeling this invitation to go talk to him, pray, and just like see what really was happening. Because there's always an underlying issue when we feel that way, right? It's not like there's a reason beyond behind that, beneath that feeling. And I remember going into my office, getting some paint. I love to create, and it's just my way of connecting with the Lord. And I think it was like finger painting. I was like finger painting on my on my office, and I remember just having this conversation. I was in tears. I'm like, God, I just want to quit. I'm done with lettering. I'm done with social media. Like, this is too much for my brain. This is too much for my heart. And he just kind of like brought me back to, the story with the boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And he was like, kind of just brought me into the story in my mind's eye. And he was like, Jenessa, what do you have to, like, what have I gifted you with? That was his first question. And I remember just sitting there and being like, well, Lord, I know for a fact, I mean, this has been told to me my whole life, and I know this about myself is that I have a gift of encouragement. I just see the glass half full. I can see through the lens of hope. That's just my natural view in life, is just hope and encouragement. And so I was like, well, it's encouragement. And then he began to explain to me, he's like, if you just give me that, just be faithful in the thing that I have given you, just like that boy with the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, I will take that very little that you feel you have. I will bless it, because that's what happened. Jesus took it and then he blessed it. And then it was fed to the multitudes. And he said, I will take your gift, your small thing that you feel like you have, and I will take it, and I will take it to feed so many more people than you could ever imagine. But what I need is faithfulness. And will you give what you have? And it was just this very simple invitation. And honestly, it was also like a paradigm shift in that world of, I don't have to be responsible for feeding the 5,000. I have to give it to Jesus first, you know? And that's the difference, right? And that's what I'm passionate about to share with people that want to be content creators, is it's not your job to feed people. Like, your job is to be faithful to give what you have, and that only comes through letting God pour into you first, and letting your life be filled with his presence, his words, and then you be faithful to give that away in the measure that you've been given it, and then letting God do the rest. Letting him bring it to the people that need to see it, right? And so that's kind of how I got into it, and that was like the beginning, and that's when I was like, yes, I'm all in, and haven't looked back since. It's been a learning journey. Have I done it perfectly? Absolutely not. I'm still growing and I'm still learning, but it is very fun and life-giving for me even today after 9 years.
That is wild. Wow, there's so many things in there that you said that I think are just such a breath of fresh air. I think for women who are in the content creator space or who want to be, because I think obviously we know social media is a highlight reel, but how you shared about just being in the process, sharing the process and being faithful with that, it is sometimes hard. I mean, to feel like we hear all these people are talking about all the strategy and having to know like your game plan and all this stuff. It's so easy to get caught up in that. I certainly have. But then, like you said, just we're not the ones responsible for feeding the people. We're just responsible for being faithful and like letting it be a partnership thing between you and the Lord, and seeing how that reaches people in such a timely way, I'm sure has been such an encouragement to you, seeing how like, okay, Lord, one step forward at a time in faith and see what happens. What has that been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. Just putting one step, in front of the other, and just being okay with the process. And I think for a while, I mean, there's been seasons, like I said, like I haven't done it perfectly, where you can get into the like, oh, what's working for that person? I need to try that, or I need to do, my message needs to change to that person's message because that message is being more received. And it can be easy to get out of your lane, but you need to stay in your lane, because that's where you're most anointed, right? And there are messages that I will continue to re-hit, like I beat that drum, because it's what I've lived out, right? You can only give what you have. You're only going to be anointed in the things that you release, that you've walked through, and that you process with God. I had a mentor, she recently said, and it's so good, and she's talking a lot about like the content creator world, that it's like we're sitting at the table, we're feasting at God's table. Imagine there's a big table, we're all there, There's all this amazing food in front of us, and God puts like this plate in front of us, and He's like, enjoy, like, just enjoy this, what I've given you. But we're so quick to pick that plate up and then give it away. And we don't actually like feast on it ourselves first. And that's been like a huge thing that I can, it's not a danger, but I feel like it's like I think we need to be aware as creators online, like we need to be feasting ourselves first. Like, how are we feasting on the things? How are we marinating in it? And then from there, like releasing it, like it will have so much more impact and power. But it's so easy to get into this like system of like, I just need to pump out, whatever. And I think it's great to pump out content. It's not bad, but it's just content that you feasted on. And like, how are you, it just carries a different weight. And so I'm not shaming anyone that's like pumping out content. I do that sometimes. I'm like, I posted 3 times a day and I had capacity for that day. Sometimes I don't post. I didn't post last year for 3 months and I was okay with it. Like, it didn't bother me. But it's just like, being in that ebb and flow with the Lord, and then also just feasting. I don't know if that did I answer your question?
That's great. And I think that's such a good point too, because it is so easy. At least this has been my experience. Maybe you can relate, or someone else that's listening. I love social media. I have a love hate, but I just really love the fact that so many Christian content creators, like you said, are starting to show up in this space that so many people have demonized and said, like, oh, it's so bad. I hate social media. And, nothing can come of it but bad. And that's where so many people we're able to meet with so many people who do need hope, who do need encouragement, which I think is so cool. And for me, it's been tricky kind of living in the tension of like, okay, I feel called to show up. I love creating content, but I don't want to get sucked into the hustle of it, the feeling like, okay, if you have to keep up and chase the algorithm to be relevant or to reach people or grow, and like all of those things, getting sucked into that is so easy. And obviously it really quickly sucks the joy out of the whole content creation process as well. But are there other dangers that you've seen, or maybe boundaries you've set, other things you've learned along the way, just things that maybe advice you would give to someone who's early in their journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things, but having your inner life being bigger than your outer life is a big one, and that'll set you up for success, right? So having a bigger, and that comes from feasting on the things before you give it away, right? So that's a big one. I think just knowing yourself, like if you're if you're feeling like if just being like checking in with your emotional state, even with social media, if you're starting to feel that anxiety, like pull away and ask God questions. Like, don't just pull away and then check out. Like, pull away, set that boundary, but then actually go to the Lord and say, like, God, hey God, is there something I'm missing here? Like, why do I feel this anxiety around social media today? And maybe He will reveal, like, hey, there's a lie you're believing, or you're not surrendering this to me. And one of the things that I committed to, and this was very early on because I had to learn this, is I will revisit a question often to see. It's kind of like the test of like where my heart is, and the question is, if God asked me right now to delete forever my social media platform, would I be okay? And I'm like honestly sitting with that question, because if there's anything in me that's like, oh, well, I don't know, then I'm like, okay, I'm clenching. I'm like holding on too tight and I need to let go. And it's really this test of surrender, and just like surrendering it before the Lord. Like, you can get, you can get so caught up in all this stuff, like the algorithm. And if I'm completely honest, I don't mind their strategy. Like, there is strategy, I'm just not wired that way. I have never once took time, and I'm being completely honest, I've never once took time to study the algorithm ever. I'm like, I don't have capacity for that, A. And B, like, I just for my this is just my conviction. God will put me where He needs me to be. Like, I don't need to rely on an algorithm. I'm relying that the Lord will take it. And have there been times where I'm like, why is this video getting like 10 times less views? And I'm like, okay, whatever. It's not about the view. It really it kind of tests where your heart is, and reveals where your heart is, right? And so I try to keep my heart as pure as it can be in the social media space, because it's not about me. It's not about how many followers and having more followers, yeah, it maybe feels like, oh, I have a bigger platform. You can almost equate that to like I'm doing something right, but it's not. Like I'm just gonna say that flat out right now. Like it's not. It's not a reflection of your success. You know what is a reflection is faithfulness and you showing up. And when we get to heaven, the words are, "Well done, good and faithful servant." It's not, hey, you built this platform. It's not about the numbers. It's not about anything. Like Jesus had 12 disciples and they changed the world. He had 12 followers. Like, he didn't need this huge like gathering around him. He didn't need to build his following in discipleship. Actually, he repelled a lot of people because of his message was repent, sell everything you have. It'll cost you your life. Pick up your cross. Like there was a lot of things that weren't very flashy, right? So following and all that, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I know that's really hard to hear, especially for people that are starting out because we equate success to that. But I'm telling you, like faithfulness, like be faithful. Yeah, it's okay to grow and it's okay to desire that, but with the right heart and the purity of your heart, it's so important. And I'm telling you right now, God will use the journey of social media to refine you. And He has for me, and He still does, and it will never end. He'll use all things. But yeah, that's some thoughts.
That's amazing thoughts. That's like such a I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's hard to hear that because our world is just preaching to us that it's followers that measure success. It's like likes, views, engagement that we need to measure how well we're doing. And I feel like when we do feel, called to use our gifts in the social media space, it so quickly can distract us from what's important. And like just showing up to be faithful, I feel like that is such the question you asked, like if my social media was deleted, if it was all gone, like would I be okay with that? And that is a really hard question to ask ourselves sometimes. I mean, I've definitely been there. Like I'm an Enneagram 3, so achiever through and through. Just like when I struggle, like if I don't have a visible measure of my success, I wonder, am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something like where am I at in the journey? But measuring it by faithfulness to the Lord, that's just a totally different story. And I think that's just such a good perspective because I know you said in the beginning as well, like the things God calls you to in the process, He refines you, He heals you. Like there's so much in that that makes the output so much richer. So I would love to know, like in your journey, what have been some of the biggest, like either breakthrough moments or moments where you've just been faithful to the process and seen like, this was so worth it. Like you've seen how your faithfulness to the process has impacted people on the other side of that, or even yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there's the main thing that pops up to mind is, you know, my journey through just the miscarriages that I've had, and just to be honest, in the beginning, like I don't want to share online. I didn't want to, and I did it for a little bit because I just felt like I wanted to process some of that quietly. Whereas, and I would never judge people's motives, but I think that it's become way more common, and I think maybe for a good reason, like that people were hearing more messages of miscarriages online to give people hope and to support each other. But for a season, I was like, I need to get okay myself. I need to be. I just knew for myself I didn't want to share online when my heart wasn't in a place of healing, that if someone said something, I wouldn't be okay, right? And so it was just protecting my own heart. But once I felt like I was able to grieve and walk through some things, the Lord was like, all right, it's time to process, to share a little bit. And I remember it was really vulnerable. Like I know just because I have a bigger following, like I still feel scared sharing things, and it's vulnerable. And just because I have a big platform doesn't mean it makes everything easy. Like there are things that were really hard for me to just even be vulnerable in. And but the Lord was like, gave me some direction and vision to set up some of these group calls that I'd never done. But I heard the Lord say, do a Zoom call and offer any women that have gone through miscarriages to join and share your story. And so I remember I did this 3 times, and I had probably a total of like 60 women come through it. And it was powerful just getting to share my testimony with a small group of women, and what, just being obedient to the vulnerability and what it led to. And I think there's been at least 5 women from that group now that are pregnant or have had babies with rainbow babies. And I prayed over them for healing, and that God would like have give them a miracle. And so it was just like such a really cool moment. And sometimes God will lead you to do things that are really uncomfortable. I remember also a season where God's like, try doing more lives. And I was like, lives, I don't want to do lives. Like lives for some reason, I still don't love doing lives for some reason. I'm like, I'll avoid it like the plague. But just doing things that maybe make you uncomfortable so I find that some God will still ask me to be obedient in some things that are very uncomfortable or maybe things that I don't really want to talk about or share, but I know it's him and it's worth it because I'll get those DMs from those people being like, "You have no idea I needed this," or I had this one lady one time reach out to me. She's like, "I'm not even a Christian and I'm searching." And it was just like, I can't remember all the details, but just even the fact that this content is reaching unbelievers is like, wow, that's like, yes, Lord, that's the purpose. Like I want it to reach the unbelievers. And so just being really obedient, in the message, I think has been really a huge thing for me. Like, cause being faithful to show up is one thing, but being faithful in the message that God's asking you to bring is another. And I've seen really massive breakthrough and it's been encouraging and it's not always going to be comfortable. It's going to be very uncomfortable, but it's worth it and it's fun.
I love that so much. And speaking of the message, you said something earlier that I thought was so good. It's learning to kind of stay in your lane. And that is something that I have struggled with. And I've talked to so many other women, I'm sure you have too, who are like, what's my thing? Like, how do I know what God wants me to share? Do you have any advice that you would speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, the first question I would say is what's your breakthrough in life been? What's your testimony? What has God done for you? Because what God's done for you, he wants to do it again in other people's lives. And so for me, my message of identity has been a huge one, and stewardship. That's kind of like my two main messages right now. And until and having hope with babies is another message. Things that I've walked through. And so, don't try to just make up something because it's trending or that's what it works for someone else. Like, sit with the Lord, write down like what have been my breakthrough moments? Where has God shown up for me? What mountains have I conquered with the Lord? Because you're anointed in that. And that's something that you can release and share and offer breakthrough. And like what works for you? Like how did God lead you through that? And really giving people an inside look to your process of breakthrough and your testimony. And I think starting with your testimony is always the best idea because the testimony of Jesus is a spirit of prophecy, it says in Revelation. And so, like I said earlier, what God did for you, he wants to do it again in other people's lives. And us sharing our testimonies is absolutely powerful. And then that's kind of what I did for a while. And then more messages kind of come out from that. And I find language to what he's done and different ways to say it. And it resonates with people. And some of my highest engaged content is around my testimony and becoming a daughter, not a servant, living from love, not for love, right? All these things that I had to walk through in life is now, I could see the hand of the Lord behind it because I walked through it, right? And so I would encourage listeners, like, what's your testimony? Write down the areas of breakthrough that you have that you can easily give away and really it's all about serving others, right? Like that's why we're on this platform. It's to serve people and to encourage them and to point them to Jesus. So using your testimony is a great way to find your lane.
That's so good. I love that. And I was actually just talking to someone about kind of this idea yesterday about how easy it is to forget when we're the ones living it. Like things that we have, like the breakthroughs we've had, areas where we've had freedom, it's so easy to like celebrate and move on from that, like on to the next thing, growing to the next level with the Lord. And I have to remind myself of that often because a lot of my big breakthrough was in the early years in my relationship with the Lord. And I often forget to go back there because he did so much work that I still can use and share to encourage people. And I don't know, it just becomes like common sense or, like normal to us that we can forget sometimes to go back there. But I think that's amazing, even just for ourselves to go back and revisit all that he's done, listing the breakthroughs. Like, how powerful is that? That's such a good idea.
Yes.
Kind of in that same vein, because you do have your shop as well, like your hand lettering has really taken off for your business as well. So I would love to know, because this has become a thing in the social media space too, this pressure that women sometimes feel to monetize their gifts or their hobbies or their talents. What are your thoughts on that pressure that we sometimes face?
I mean, I would say take that pressure off, girl. Like, that pressure, there's already so many things that we navigate in life. Like, we only put that pressure on ourselves. And I mean, if I think monetizing social media, I mean, you need to. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think it really comes down to like, do you have grace for it? Is this what God's calling you to do? Asking yourself really good questions and checking in with God, not running ahead, not running behind, lagging behind his presence, but walking side by side with the Holy Spirit and being led by the Lord is so crucial. And you'll be set up for success when you live that way in any area of life, right? So, nothing wrong with monetizing social media. I think just checking in those places. For me, it was everything grew simultaneously. So as I was growing, as I was doing my hand lettering, I was doing social media at the same time. So kind of both worked hand in hand. And so it wasn't like I grew one and then decided it could kind of grew together, if that makes sense. I'm seeing a lot more creative ways that people are monetizing online. Like, for me, I personally knew I had to make the decision early on whether I wanted to start, advertising and making money that way through reviews or just getting products. And I decided that wasn't for me. That just wasn't nothing wrong with that. If that's the way that you want to build your online, social media content creator, influencer that gets paid to share about products. I think that's great. Just wasn't my lane. And I was like, I don't know if this is me. I mean, I love getting free stuff, but I don't think this is me. And I'll do it occasionally if it really is like this aligns with my heart and my faith and everything. But I mean, I also just didn't need that income because I had my shop already, right? So it was just one of those things. But I think it's great. And one of the things that I encourage people is like, hey, if you want to monetize, like, think about what are you offering people, right? It's all about serving others. And when you have this lens of how can I serve people with what I have to give, right? It's all coming back to the loaves and the fishes. Like, what do you have to give that can serve people? How can you help people in an area that you are successful in, right? So instead of having the lens of like, what can I get from people? It's like, what can I give? And when you have that flip of what can I give people, resource wise or PDFs or whatever, like, it can be downloadable links or downloadable PDFs for $5.99, whatever. You can get really creative in that, but if you have that mindset from the get go, like, you'll see growth and it'll be awesome. And it's just a lot of testing and, trial and error and all that. But I think it's great. It's not a bad thing. I think you just need to have grace for it and know that this is what God's calling you to do.
I love that. And honestly, I love that it's just that you've kind of simplified the process. It's like, okay, is this for me? Is this not? Let's get real. Let's ask some questions because it's just so easy to listen to all the other voices saying, okay, if you're going to do social media, you have to go all in. You've got to post 100 times a day and you got to do this, this, and this and make money and post these links. And sometimes that's just like you said, I love that. It's just not what we have the grace to do. Sometimes you work another job. Sometimes you're a stay-at-home mom. That's just your season. Sometimes you have other stuff going on. And that's okay. You don't have to. I feel like sometimes we feel or we hear this lie that social media has to be all or nothing if we want to reach people or make an impact. And that is just so not true.
No, it's not. And there's a grace for different seasons. Like, it's the ebb and flow, right? Like, your pace in social media will shift in different seasons. Like, I know it's about to change for me, and I'm totally okay with that. Having a baby soon, I'm like, all right, I'm not going to be online as much. I'm even in this season right now, like, my husband and I were really focusing on building business. We're in a lot of transition and just our lives in general with baby, but other areas, and it's opened up a lot more space for me. Like, we've been running my company part time for the last 7 years, and now we're for the first time going full time to build this. And I'm finding myself being pulled away a little bit more from social media, and I'm okay with that. It's like this ebb and flow, and going with the pace that God is putting before you and recognizing, like, I just need to follow this pace because there's grace in that, and it's just going to change and it's okay. And it's that thing, like, I think it really at the end of the day comes down to this unnecessary pressure that we put on ourselves, or we allow the enemy to put on ourselves on us, and we just can't bow to that. Like, we can't live that way. We can't live at the demands of what people need or what we think people need. Like, we just have to follow the Holy Spirit and just be okay with what is in front of us in the assignment. Like, I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to like, you have an assignment that is important and it's going to look different than my assignment. And so, and your friend's assignment, like, you have to stop comparing assignments because no one's assignment is meant to look the same. And the way that we go about that assignment will change in seasons, and it's fun. It's hard sometimes because we don't like the process or the season, but it's all part of the process, and it's important that we yield to it.
That's so good, especially because, like you're saying, sometimes we do need that time apart from social media, like time to feast on what the Lord is doing, time to be present in the process, not doing output all the time. Like sometimes there's just seasons to be still, and that can be hard when you're trying to grow a community, a following, a platform, whatever you want to call it. But it just, yeah, like be learning not to fight your season, like not to fight your pace is so, so freeing. I love that you said that. And for you, I'd love to know, you have had a lot of different seasons. I mean, you've got a 4-year old son, which I also have a 4-year old son. So I just know what that's like.
You know what it's like.
It's wild. But then also like building this business part time and then preparing for a baby. And, like lots of transitions for you, like peeling the filter off, like outside of social media. What is your time with the Lord been? How do you protect that time to stay connected with Him, stay inspired for your content creation, like in different seasons?
Yeah, I mean, that changes so much. Like, for one of my mentors, she recently, and it's something that I've been just pondering on, and it's been so helpful, is living life in the plural, not the singular. And what she means by that is, so often we can say like, "Oh, I'm doing this," or in our day to day, like, "I'm going to the grocery store," or "I'm," like, we have our plans. It's like I, and she kind of said something that's been like a paradigm shift that I'm retraining myself, because it really helps you see God in everything that you're doing, and the living life with God, not just checking in with Him in the morning or evening, but it's living life with Him and living out of the overflow. But it's living life in the plural. So instead of saying I, you say we. Like, we are going here. Like, me and it turns it from I to me and Jesus, and it really like pulls you into this reality that like we are doing life with Him. And obviously, like the devotionals, reading, getting in the Word, studying the Bible, stay. There's just a lot of things that we can do that can really set us up for success, like the Word, doing life with God, running with people that love Jesus as much as you or more than you. You're not always the one pouring out. Like, you have people that are challenging you in your faith. You're plugged into a local church. I know the church isn't perfect, but finding a body that you can call home and plugging in is so healthy. And I will die to that message, because I am so for the local church. Yes, she's not perfect, like I said, but it's so crucial that we are plugged in. So there's all these little things that if we can stay healthy and whole in those areas, it'll bring health into every area of our lives, right? And so, yeah, that's some of the things like that I will make sure that I am on top of, because it will affect the way that I show up to my family, the way that I show up in life, in my business. Is like, I need to, and it's not like a checklist, but it's like living from love, right? Not for love. And it's really keeping your heart in this place of like, I'm already loved by the Lord. I'm believing this truth, and I'm like letting His love, His presence wash over me. And I'm believing everything that the Word says, that, about my identity, and like walking out that, is so crucial. But yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense? I just kind of rambled a bit.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. I'm just like processing sitting here. I'm like, yes, this is so good because honestly, when you operate that way and you realize it's not up to you, well, first of all, it's not about us and it's not up to us to make an impact. It's a partnership with the Lord. All we're doing is co-laboring with Him and, speaking what He speaks, like just being the vessel takes the pressure off of us, like you said, and it helps us like safeguard from those things that distract us, like comparison, which you mentioned, and lies, like getting really real, knowing the truth helps us like recognize when things that are not in alignment with God's call for our lives. Like it's just so important to have that as a foundation, I guess.
Yeah, and Sabbath too. I will say, I forgot to mention Sabbath
Yes.
is so, especially if you run a business. I mean, in general, but especially my life and how fast we're running right now, I'm like, I have had to fight for Sabbath, and I think for the first time in probably a very long time since before we got busy in life, I'm like now have this in place of Sabbathing is have become easier because I know how much I need it, and it's really, one of my friends who is incredible, and she's Jewish background, Messianic Jew. She just was like, she's amazing. And she'd always encourage me. She's like, you just strive into rest. Striving into rest, you have to prepare. Your week has to prepare for that day. And so I realized that like I have to prepare I have to strive into rest. And when she says strive, she means like prepare. Like don't just leave everything you need to do on the day that you Sabbath. Like prepare for Sabbath. Like try, I mean, and she's not saying like you have to be totally strict, like you can't do your laundry, but even for me, I'm like just trying to get things ready for that day when I'm resting. So business emails, things that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to like get all of these things figured out so that I can truly rest and like connect with God, be with my family. And so that too is really, really important. And I wish I mean, hindsight, right? I really wish I had done this a lot sooner. And I think Sabbath also is a sign of trust, like how much we really trust God in the things that we're doing. And I have had to do that and like let go of even the business and things of like, okay, I can feel my heart being like, oh, if I need to feel like I need to keep working on the day I know I'm meant to be resting, there's an area I'm not trusting God in. And it's just reveals that real quick. So,
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, that's so good. I did, gosh, last year I like challenged myself to implement Sabbath and resting more intentionally. And then I would do this scroll free Sunday.
oh, I love that.
And I, for a few times, would like take it so far to where I didn't even have my phone with me on Sundays. And I mean, it was very humbling because I realized how often I just want to like reach for it,
Right?
check the notifications, and just like out of habit, like it's just a default, like a reflex. And yeah, it'll do some real work for you to Sabbath or take a break from social media. But oh, that's so good. I love all of this. Well, before we go, I would love to know, is there anything else you would want to say to the girl, or maybe like looking back on your own journey yourself at one of your lowest moments, maybe a woman who's just in this journey, like wants to make a difference and show up and like be faithful on social media with these passions God has for her, but maybe she's like getting distracted by the lies that says she's not doing good enough or she's not making an impact, it's not worth it, all of those things. What would you say to her?
Yeah. I would say just start. Don't wait. I think your voice, oh, I know that you have something to say. Your voice is powerful. You have a message. It's not gonna it even though it seems like you're just repeating what's being said, it's not because it's coming from you and it's your story and it's needed and just start. Like don't wait for the right opportunity because if you just keep waiting for that feeling that oh now I'm ready, you're never gonna start because no one feels ready. You just have to do it. You have to step out of the boat and do it for God. Like just make that your number one motivation is like I'm doing this as worship to Jesus and and he's really good at pruning us, right? And so even sometimes I hear people saying, well, I don't feel like I'm ready to like I don't have it all figured out. I don't feel like I'm 100% like healthy, like not saying like if you're really struggling with like crazy anxiety on social media, maybe try to work through that. But like God will prune you through that process while you start, just like he did with me in the beginning. Like he's really good at pruning us and getting us to where we need to be internally, but just be faithful in the assignment and you'll see God take the loaves and the fishes and he will multiply it and feed a lot of people and you just go on with the ride with Jesus. It's worth it. Do it.
I love that. That's so good. Well, thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. I love just like watching your journey unfold on social media. It's just so cool to see more Christian content creators showing up in the space. It's so fun. So, will you please tell everybody where they can find you and connect with you and shop and all the things?
Well, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so I mean, I'm on socials, Jenessa Wait, JENESSAWAIT, as in wait on the Lord. That's another whole funny story that like dad had me married to the last name Wait as someone that loves to run ahead.
Love that.
And yeah, and I also actually have a course called the Content Creator Lab, which is literally a course that talks about everything we've kind of shared a little bit more in depth of how to be an influencer for the Lord, for the kingdom online. And you can find that at jenessawait.com. And I have a couple other courses, but yeah, I have a shop and it's shop.jenessawait.com. And that's where you'll find all the faith filled goods. I love creating and using my gift to encourage and stir up faith in people. We have some really cool hats we just launched. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
I love it. You guys know I'll make sure everything is linked for you. That's so cool that you have a course for this as well. So everybody who wants to dive deeper, there you go. But Jenessa, thank you so much for your time, for being here, for sharing your story, and for all the work that you're doing on social media to encourage these women.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune into another episode of the Bywords Show. I love having you here, and I am truly so thankful for your support. Don't forget to share a screenshot of this episode to let me know you were here, and quick favor, if you enjoyed this episode, would you take a second to leave a review? It really helps our community grow. If you want more, you can shop my books Waking Up and Love Is at thehannahhughes.com or on Amazon, and be sure to join my email list for all the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come connect with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.